INFJs are often called the rarest personality type. They're known for their empathy, deep thinking, and quiet strength. But most people don't see that right away. In fact, the average person usually doesn't understand the INFJ at all. What they see is just the surface. That's because INFJs are layered. They feel one thing, think another, and express something completely different. To the average person, someone who isn't focused on psychology, personality theory, or emotional depth, INFJs can be confusing. What seems obvious to the INFJ often goes unnoticed by others. What feels deep to them may come across as too much or too distant to someone else. This video explores 6 ways average people tend to perceive the INFJ. These perceptions aren't always wrong, but they're usually incomplete. Some are based on how INFJs make others feel. Some are based on misunderstandings. And others are reactions to the INFJ's natural difference from the crowd. If you're an INFJ, you've probably had people label you in ways that didn't feel accurate. Maybe someone called you too quiet or too intense. Maybe they opened up to you out of nowhere or misunderstood your silence. These aren't random experiences. They're patterns. And they say a lot about how the world sees you without knowing the full story. Understanding these outside perceptions can help INFJs navigate social life with more clarity. It doesn't mean changing who you are. It just means knowing how others are likely to react. Let's start with the first way average people often see the INFJ and why it makes others feel drawn in, even when they don't fully understand why. Way number 1. They seem emotionally supportive and safe. One of the first things average people notice about an INFJ is how easy it feels to talk to them. There's something about their presence that feels calm, quiet, and accepting. Even people who don't normally open up find themselves sharing personal stories or deep feelings with an INFJ, and sometimes they're not sure why. This happens because INFJs naturally make space for emotions. They listen without interrupting. They nod, give eye contact, and respond in gentle ways. They don't rush people, and they don't make others feel judged. That kind of presence is rare and deeply comforting. To the average person, this feels like emotional safety. They sense that the INFJ won't use their words against them. They feel understood, even if nothing specific is said. That silent understanding creates trust. This is also why INFJs often attract people who are struggling. Without trying, they become the listener, the confidant, or the person who just gets it. Sometimes this is flattering, but other times it can feel like a heavy responsibility. What most people don't realize is that this emotional support doesn't come from nowhere. It's not just about being nice or quiet. It comes from the INFJ's deep empathy and emotional sensitivity. They notice pain in others, even when it's hidden. And they genuinely want to help people feel seen and heard. To the average person, this emotional depth might not be obvious. They just feel comforted and drawn in. But for the INFJ, it's a complex experience. They're taking in emotions, analyzing patterns, and offering care all at once. It can be draining if they don't set boundaries. This perception of being emotionally safe is usually positive, but it can also lead to misunderstandings. Some people may assume the INFJ always wants to listen, or that they don't have emotional needs of their own. Others may think the INFJ is too sensitive when they step back to recharge. Still, this is one of the most common ways people see the INFJ. They may not know anything about personality types or intuition, but they know how the INFJ makes them feel. And that feeling is usually safe, seen, and emotionally accepted. Way number 2. They are viewed as walking paradoxes. To the average person, INFJs are hard to label. They don't fit into one box. They can be serious one moment, playful the next. They're quiet, but when they speak, they say something that hits deep. They keep to themselves, but people are drawn to them. This mix of qualities creates a sense of mystery and sometimes confusion. That's why many people describe INFJs as walking paradoxes. They're full of contradictions, and yet somehow it works. They're introverts who can connect deeply with others. They're emotional but also thoughtful. They value peace, but they have strong opinions. They avoid the spotlight but often leave a strong impression. For the average person, this can be difficult to read. People expect consistency. They want to put others in categories. When someone doesn't fit, they either become interesting or hard to trust. INFJs often fall into both roles depending on who's watching. Some people admire this layered personality. They might say things like, "You're so hard to figure out," or "I never know what you're thinking, but I always want to know more." Others might find it unsettling. They might say the INFJ is distant, moody, or unpredictable, simply because they don't understand how deep emotions and logic can exist together. What's really happening is that the INFJ is showing different parts of themselves in different settings. They're not being fake, they're just incredibly tuned in. They adjust their energy based on the space they're in. If the room is loud, they stay quiet. If someone needs support, they show compassion. If deep conversation starts, they lean in. To people who don't operate this way, it can seem confusing. But to the INFJ, it's just how they move through the world. They don't need to show all sides of themselves at once. They reveal what's needed in the moment. This paradoxical energy makes INFJs fascinating but hard to define. Average people often walk away feeling like they just met someone unlike anyone else, but they're not sure what to make of it. And that sense of mystery is one of the reasons INFJs are often remembered long after the conversation ends. Way number 3, they appear introspective and idealistic. Average people often notice that INFJs seem deep in thought, even when they're not saying much. There's a quiet focus in their eyes. They may look calm on the outside, but inside, their mind is full of reflections, ideas, and observations. This inward energy gives them an introspective vibe. To the average person, this often reads as being deep or serious. INFJs tend to step back and observe before jumping into conversations. They think before they speak. They notice things that other people overlook, like someone's mood, a subtle shift in tone, or something unsaid in a room. Even in everyday situations, INFJs are scanning for meaning. Along with this introspective energy comes idealism. INFJs often talk about values, purpose, or what could be. They care deeply about justice, truth, and emotional connection. They may not express it loudly, but their life is often guided by big-picture thinking. They want the world to be better, not just for themselves, but for everyone. To the average person, this combination can be admirable, puzzling, or even intimidating. Some people respect INFJs for being so thoughtful. Others might see them as too intense or overly serious. They might say things like, "You think too much," or "You're too sensitive." But those comments usually come from people who haven't taken the time to look deeper. INFJs also don't chase small talk or superficial approval. This adds to the perception that they're on a different wavelength. While others are focused on likes, trends, or what's popular, INFJs are thinking about deeper questions. What's meaningful? What's real? What's right? Because of this, average people might think INFJs are dreamers, people with strong values but not much connection to the real world. But that's not the full story. INFJs may be idealistic, but they're also deeply committed to action. They want their ideals to shape their choices, not just their thoughts. In the eyes of most people, INFJs are quiet thinkers with strong beliefs. That can lead to admiration or misunderstanding. Either way, their introspective and idealistic nature is one of the first things people notice, even if they can't put it into words. Way number 4, they are seen as quietly charismatic. NFJs are rarely loud. They don't dominate conversations, take up space just to be seen or chase attention. But somehow, people still notice them. And even more than that, people remember them. That's because INFJs carry a quiet kind of charisma that doesn't rely on words. This kind of presence is subtle. It shows up in their tone, body language, and emotional depth. When INFJs speak, people tend to listen. They speak with purpose, often saying things that feel meaningful or surprising. They don't talk just to fill space, they speak when they have something real to say. To the average person, this makes them stand out without trying. There's a certain gravity to how INFJs interact. They listen with care, respond with thought, and connect with people in ways that feel personal. This creates a sense of being seen, and that's something most people aren't used to. Even in a group, INFJs don't need to be the center of attention. But people still check in with them. Others may look to them for emotional cues or seek them out during quieter moments. This influence is often unnoticed by the INFJ, but not by the people around them. Some people may misread this charisma as mystery or aloofness. But for others, it's deeply appealing. There's something calm and grounded about the INFJ's presence. They seem to know who they are without needing validation from the outside. This is what makes their charisma different. It's not about performance. It's about presence. The INFJ makes others feel valued, not by being charming in a traditional way, but by being real, sincere, and emotionally in tune. To the average person, this feels powerful, even if they can't explain why. Way number 5, they come across as socially awkward or indirect. For all their depth and empathy, INFJs don't always come across smoothly in casual social settings. Their way of speaking, reacting, and connecting is often different from what the average person expects. And that can lead to the perception that they're socially awkward or even hard to read. One reason for this is that INFJs are always thinking. While someone is talking, the INFJ is processing not just the words, but the emotion, intention, and context behind them. This can lead to pauses in conversation, not because they're unsure, but because they're reflecting. To others, this might look like hesitation or discomfort. INFJs also tend to choose their words carefully. They may speak in metaphors, ask deep questions, or give complex answers. In fast, casual conversations, this can feel out of place. Some people may not understand their point, or may think they're being vague or overly complicated. They also dislike confrontation. When they disagree, they may try to explain their point without offending the other person. This careful tone can come across as indirect or overly cautious. In group settings, they might go silent rather than challenge something directly. To the average person, all of this can be misread. They may see the INFJ as awkward, shy, or passive. But what they're really seeing is someone who's deeply thoughtful and sometimes overloaded by too much surface-level interaction. This misunderstanding can be frustrating for INFJs. They want connection, but on a real level. They often leave conversations feeling unseen or misinterpreted. And the more they experience this, the more they may pull back socially. Still, this perception is common. The INFJ's natural communication style doesn't match the pace or tone of most social spaces. And while it's based on care and depth, it can be mistaken for discomfort or social confusion. Way number 6, they feel different or out of step. Even without saying a word, INFJs often give off the feeling that they don't quite fit the mold. Average people sense this right away. There's something slightly off about the INFJ, not in a bad way, but in a way that signals they're not fully part of the crowd. This is because INFJs tend to move through life with a different rhythm. While others focus on trends, appearances, or group opinions, the INFJ is focused on meaning, purpose, and emotional truth. That difference can be felt in how they speak, what they prioritize, and even in their silence. The average person may not understand it, but they notice it. Some may admire it and say, "You seem so unique," or "You think differently from most people I know." Others may feel unsettled by it and keep their distance. Either way, INFJs rarely go unnoticed for long. Even in simple interactions, the INFJ's perspective often stands apart. They don't respond to jokes the same way. They may bring up deeper topics out of nowhere. They seem more interested in people's emotions than in gossip or surface-level news. These things make them feel out of step with what most people expect. Because of this, INFJs often hear comments like, "You're different," "You're hard to read," or "I've never met anyone like you." At times, these can feel like compliments, but they can also be reminders that the INFJ doesn't always feel fully understood. This perception follows them in school, work, and relationships. They may be respected but not fully included. They may be liked but still feel a quiet distance between themselves and the group. That gap is often where their uniqueness lives, and where misunderstanding begins. To the average person, the INFJ is someone who seems to live in their own world. And in many ways, that's true. But it's not because they want to be separate. It's because their way of seeing and feeling is simply different from most. INFJs are complex, quiet, and often misunderstood. While they may not seek attention, they still leave a strong impression. To the average person, they might seem warm but distant, deep but mysterious, present but always thinking about something more. In this video, we explored 6 ways the world often sees the INFJ. These included being emotionally safe, living as a paradox, appearing deeply introspective, having quiet charisma, seeming socially awkward, and standing apart from the crowd. None of these views are completely wrong, but none tell the whole story either. INFJs live with depth and contradiction. They can't be summed up in one word or understood through one conversation. And most of the time, they're okay with that. Still, being misunderstood can be hard. Many INFJs carry the quiet weight of not being fully seen. That's why it helps to know how others view you, even if those views are incomplete. It brings awareness, and it creates space for better connection. If you're an INFJ, which of these perceptions have you heard before? Did any surprise you or feel familiar? Let us know in the comments. And if you're someone who knows an INFJ, maybe now you understand them a little better. The surface is only part of the story. The real beauty of the INFJ lives underneath. Thanks for watching, and remember, just because people don't fully understand you doesn't mean you're not making an impact.